Hi, welcome to Actualol. I'm John Perkis. Today I'm doing a Q&A answering the questions that my patrons have asked me on Patreon. Let's get to the first question. Dan asks, I really treasure games that facilitate table talk within my group, and while negotiation games like Chinatown or improv games like Snake Oil definitely fit the bill, I find that games that allow table talk to emerge naturally are consistently great experiences for everyone around the table. Do you have any favorite games where the session is really elevated by what happens outside the confines of the rules? Ooh, that's a good question. This is a great example of one that I've played recently. Trekking the World is a game where you're trying to get to different famous destinations. And on the backs of the cards, these are the cards that you're trying to meet. They're your goals. And they are different special places. So Fisherman's Bastion, we had never heard of before playing. So you're learning about the world and these things. And the reason you're learning about the world is because on the back of the card, it gives you information about the place. So Fisherman's Bastion is in Hungary. And it talks about it being in a neo-Romanesque style. And so you learn about it, but it's a really good one for talking with each other because you're discussing which parts of the world you've each been to. Some of my friends had been to some of the places on this board. Then you start to, tell stories about those holidays. The theme of it and what you're doing gives you a reason to spark up these conversations. And that was just a nice little touch to the game that I felt really lent itself to being a good gateway game or a good family game. And one for sort of after a dinner party where, especially if you were trying to get to know people, I think everyone can come together on this type of conversation. They've got something to add. And we ended up, getting our phones out and looking certain things up on Wikipedia to find out more about these places. Michael asks, which game can you sit down, set up and play without needing the rulebook? That's a tricky one. I think I just generally always turn to the rulebook for a bit of moral support. Like you don't want to teach the game wrong, so I'll just check like one or two things. But if I was to guess, I think I could play any of these three without needing the rule book. Carcassonne, definitely. I mean, it doesn't get easier than setting up and knowing this, and I just know all the rules off by heart. Railroad Inc., yeah, I've taught this enough. And then Pandemic, the question mark would be, how many cards does everyone get? And that changes for the different player count, but I think it might be written on the board. So I probably wouldn't need the rulebook. I know how to set up the deck. I know how many cubes to put out. So yeah, these are the ones I'm confident about. Anything more complicated than this, I'm definitely going to the rulebook. Frank QB asks, what is the worst game you've had the most fun playing? And vice versa, what is a game you think is great and you've had a terrible time playing? And why was it good/bad? The worst game that I've had the most fun playing, okay, that's probably a bit easier. Something like Pit is very silly and chaotic, where you're just trading cards in real time and it all feels like it's down to luck. I played that a couple of times at a board game meetup. It's busy and fast and noisy, and so that was fun. I probably wouldn't rush to play it again, but I did have fun playing it. I had fun playing Cards Against Humanity once. Very long time ago. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's a good game, or I kind of wish it didn't exist in the world. I had fun. I was drunk and with the right group of people. As for a good game that I've had a terrible time playing, I think Social Deduction is the great answer for that, because I've had games of Avalon and Resistance where people have got very angry because they're getting accused. They just get way too het up about it. And it happens when I play with people I don't know. And that is why I don't play social deduction games with people I don't know, and means I don't really play social deduction games as much as I'd like, because it's quite hard to get a big group together for it. But I just can't go through those experiences again. People get really upset. I've heard of people crying. I can't be doing with that. And then people take it too far, and no. Those are good games, but they need the right group, otherwise they are terrible games. Ricky Rodriguez asks, what's the story on how you proposed to your wife? So, because it had been so long, because we'd been together for 13 years, I wanted to do something special. So what I did was I booked a surprise holiday to Sicily. She didn't know anything about it. I contacted her boss. I got his email address and asked him if she could have a week off work. And he said yes. I booked us a place in Sicily which is where we went on our first holiday like 10 years before. Found us a place and booked us the flights, and then just woke her up on that Saturday and said, we're going to Sicily. Because it had been so long and the idea of marriage for her was a bit off the table, even though she did want to get married. She just thought it was a surprise holiday because it was just like a fun treat. And so she was obviously like super shocked. It was just really, I was so freaking out that she would find out. Like it'd been so tricky to plan it and do everything in secret. And I was like hiding all the emails, making sure that she wouldn't see it. I was so anticipating telling her. I think I must have woken up so early, I just couldn't sleep because I just wanted to tell her. There was a little complication, which was that to get from the airport in Sicily to the place, we needed to drive, and I can't drive. So I was basically telling her that she was going on holiday, but then also being like, well, can we also hire a car in your name so that we can actually get to the place? Got on the plane, and it was really weird. We were watching Queer Eye, and they had an episode about, I think someone proposed in it or whatever, and it was just like really freaking me out. There was just so much talk of it. And so the whole journey, like getting there, was just really tense-filled. And we got there at like midnight. It took us ages to find the place. And then we went out sort of onto like the terrace of this place. I got down on one knee and proposed. I started crying, and she had waited so long that she deserved a really special moment. And so I put a lot of time into making it that way, and thankfully it came off, so I was really pleased with it. Diego Aguado asks, what kind of new games would you like to play in the next few years? I mean, that's tough. I want to be surprised, and so I can't predict what people are going to design that's then going to surprise me, or otherwise it wouldn't surprise me. I just want designers to try new things, and certainly new themes are exciting, but it's also the way to approach those themes. And the games that have really impressed me over the years, and I think that's partly because of being a board game reviewer, are the ones that try something very new that feel really refreshing. And that's what I always want. I don't want another worker placement game, another deck building game that does things in a very similar way, but just with a different theme on top. I want someone to come along and invent the next deck building or the next worker placement, this thing that we don't even have a term for yet. You know, roll and write games are great. I love roll and write games, but there are so many now, and I've got, let's say, 5 to 10 in my collection, and I really don't need any more, and I will be happy with them for the next 50 years of my life. Let's get the next wave of things along. Now, of course, that requires so much more bravery and originality and creativity for someone to just innovate a whole new genre, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's really exciting, and that's what I want to be playing in the next few years. Michael asks, any favorite movie directors and movies? Yeah, I think my sort of favorite movies are a bit dated now. I was really into movies when I was at university, and I think at that age you're kind of creating this identity for yourself. So my favorite movies from then were like The Big Lebowski, adaptation by well, I was really a big fan of the screenwriter Charlie Kaufman, and I was doing media, so I had to sort of pretend I was being a bit pretentious. But, you know, picking things I think that are funny but that have some heart, those are the films that I like. So at the time, Garden State was one that I really liked, but that was very big for people of my age at that time. The Big Lebowski is one that's definitely held up, that there's got some, it's really funny, but it's got some heart to it. It's also just very clever and different and interesting. And then like comedy films, yeah, Shaun of the Dead. I haven't watched any of these films probably in like 10 years. It feels weird to say that my favorite movies, because I just don't rewatch films. It's just not, I like a movie and then I kind of move on. In a more kind of serious vein, I really like Moon. I've had the poster ever since it came out that used to be in the back of shots. And really liked Arrival. So those kind of really powerful like sci-fi films that really like stick with you. But in terms of directors, not really like, you know, I like the Coen brothers and they'll make a few things that I like, and then there's a bunch of stuff I'm not really that into. Same with Edgar Wright, same with Denis Villeneuve. I didn't really like Blade Runner. I watched less than 10 films last year, I think. Whereas TV, I would have watched hours and hours and hours and so many different shows, comedies and dramas. That's just where my passion is in TV. I get so much more out of the connection and continued story and just those bigger arcs. I just, the world building of something like Game of Thrones, or the detail of a drama like Mayor of Easttown, where we were talking about this on the Actualol Discord, but about just, you get to see her whole life. It's not just this murder mystery. There's just this whole town that you become a part of for those 8 to 10 episodes. And they're all really good and really heartfelt, and just, it's such a journey that you go on. So yeah, I'm just a TV person these days. Benjamin Nichols asks, how much money would it take you to get to try Warhammer 40k? A lot. I think probably I wouldn't ever play Warhammer 40k. I might try Blood Bowl. I've got a couple of friends that play Blood Bowl, and they have done for, since they were teenagers. I don't think I would like it, but I would give it a try on kind of, but it would still cost you. Let's say, I think if I was being reasonable, like 50 quid. Maybe just, you pay my train fare, order in a pizza and beers, and that could be enough. How long does it take? How much am I committing to? That's, I guess, the concern. I've always been quite put off by Warhammer because my brother played it when I was a kid. We had a games workshop in Salisbury where I grew up, and that was just where a certain type of people went. Maybe it was because my brother did it. I think it just never sounded appealing to me. And I think he started on Warhammer and then switched to 40k, and he would paint the miniatures. And I never played it with him once. It's stuck in my mind as something that the 13-year-old me resisted, and I can't bring myself to ever give it a try. And to be honest, everything I have learned, it just doesn't sound like my kind of thing. But maybe Blood Bowl. David Scott asks, what themes do you feel are underrepresented in published games right now? I think that I would love to see more medical games, but really, it's not that it's underrepresented, it just hasn't been cracked. I don't think there's a great game yet about running a hospital or being a doctor, and that's what I want to see. You just need to look at video game themes or movies and TV shows, the subject matter that they cover, and see what we're missing. We haven't really got anything about the sort of coming of age experience, about being at high school or university. We don't have anything that's really like The Sims, about running a family or decorating a house, that's so appealing to so many people. It's so often for me about the specificity of what you're doing with that theme. You can do a city building game and it can just feel not interesting at all, but if you focus on a specific aspect of city building, it suddenly makes it interesting compared to all the other games out there. And so I want to see themes tackled in an original way. They don't have to be original themes. It's just how you do it is what makes it interesting to me. Wade Bates asks, what are your top 3 favorite beers? I don't have a ready to go list, but I tend to like pale ales and IPAs that are of the American style. I don't know loads about beer, but there's one in London called 5 Points Pale that I really like. Lagunitas and Sierra Nevada I quite like. Lagunitas is quite strong. It gets me drunk. These days I try to go for something like 4%, because I want to drink a little bit more and before getting drunk. I like beer, but I'm not so obsessive with it that I have loads of favorites. Kevin Nguyen asks, what is your favorite game that you got rid of? I've been asked this a few times. I honestly don't think there is a favorite game that I got rid of. I'm quite happy to get rid of games. There's something in my mind that when I've decided there's no longer space for it in the collection, then I'm done and I never look back. There's one game that I recently reacquired, which is Azul, because I thought I might have been a bit too harsh on it, and I've been playing it on Board Game Arena and really enjoying it. But actually, after playing it again in real life, it's not exciting enough for me. It's a bit too dry in real life. It's a bit too slow, and I think it works really well as an app-based game. And there are a lot of games like that. Splendor is another one. I'm happy to play them online and kind of take time over my turn when I'm a bit bored, but playing them in real life, it lacks the excitement and drama that I want from a board game, something a bit more social. It's nice to get rid of stuff and move on and create space for something new. I really enjoy that part of like curating my collection. Michael asks, which are the best TV series of all time? Well, I've actually got a list for this, but I can probably remember it. My favorite TV series of all time is ER. About 10 years ago, we just watched the whole thing, and there's so many episodes, and we would watch like 2 episodes a day. I don't know if we did it for a whole year, but we got through it so quickly. We were averaging like 20 episodes a week. I love the characters of it. It's got real heart to it, but it's also humorous. You just really warm to the characters and the journey they go on. And then you've got the drama of all the medical stuff going on. There are so many characters in ER that we absolutely love. And then you follow them and they leave, and then you get a whole new batch of them. And I really like them as well. Some people think that the show, if you go on the internet, people say that the show dies around season 8 or 9. And it's like, no, you just get a whole new batch. I really love the sort of almost like the second half, because it goes for 15 series and there's 22, 24 episodes a series, and they're all like 45 minutes long. Totally worth it, and I would love to go through it again sometime. But after that is The Wire. That's what I might answer if I was trying to impress someone, because ER is probably considered a bit more populist. The Wire is like the definitive, like amazing, objectively good TV series. Love the way it ended. Just so brilliant. I can't say anything that hasn't already been said about The Wire. I found my list. Other shows that I love. *Halt and Catch Fire* is one that we watched more recent years, and it just blew us away. That is in my top 3. It's about the computer industry in the 80s, but it's just not about that at all. It's about the human condition, trying to reach your hopes and dreams, and it's about the realities of life and relationships and friendships. The friendships and romances in that show are just so powerful and so well drawn, and the acting is incredible. It's such a good show and completely unfairly overlooked, but I assume it was cancelled, but it finishes properly. It has like the perfect ending as well. So that one I love. Marcus Shepherd asked, do you think games are getting better every year? There's a certain part of the community that points out improvements in game design, artwork, component quality, and hence believe games objectively become better. Where do you stand? I probably don't fully agree with that. I think I've become a lot more cynical being a reviewer, and I've personally struggled to see like huge improvements lately. Now, I do think there was a point. We have passed a point now where we've gone from quite ugly artwork sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, and now most games look really great. In terms of design, I think that probably overall, since 20 years ago, there are more good games, but I don't think like the best games of now necessarily top the best games of 10 years ago or 20 years ago. If you look at the games released in 2021, 2020, 2019, I don't think it's going up. Maybe some of that is the pandemic, and you'd have to look over a longer period of time. But I actually think that there were stronger years, maybe 2017, 2018, and I haven't seen as strong of a year since. But that's very much from my perspective, and I think that comes down to games these days feeling quite bloated and full of extra stuff and lacking that design purity, the core idea that makes a game fun. That's what I'm looking for in a game, and I don't see as many examples these days. I see big epic things that you either kind of fall in love with because you've invested yourself so heavily into it, or you bounce off really hard because you're like, wow, this is taking up so much space, it cost me so much money, and it isn't perfect. I just need to move on from this because this is way too big of a commitment for a game that just isn't that great. Gareth Sherwood asks, would you rather have dice for teeth or cards for hands? I mean, dice for teeth, surely. That might look quite cool. Like, like having one of those grills. Cards for hands is just useless. I think I don't think you thought about that question because it's just too obvious. Michael asks, what is the origin for the family of characters in your videos? Well, they're inspired by people that I've known. Just like any character, really. They're an amalgamation of all these different, kind of the worst parts of different people that you know. And you put them all together and hopefully it's funny. Michael asks, what are Serena's favorite games? Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, we've played lots of any of the crime games she really likes, and Pandemic is like a classic one for her. I think she also really likes Carcassonne. So it's just a lot of the games that I like. We have very similar tastes. She's just not the kind of person that's like making lists of her favorite things, so I don't have like that to go to. And to be honest, she doesn't ever get to choose what games to play because it's generally a game that I need to review. Adam Johnson asks, what's a game where you have a house rule that in your opinion makes the game much better? I can't really think of one. I don't tend to do house rules that much. It will be like a party game that they haven't put enough thought into. There are some out there that they've got great ideas and they had the great idea and then they just didn't put a load of effort in beyond that to play test it. And so you find yourself just finding much better ways to play it just on the fly. It kind of sounds arrogant, and that's why I don't really like house rules. The idea of jumping in and going, no, this is much better after having played a game like 2 or 3 times, when clearly the designers would have played it hundreds of times. Michael asks, have you traveled much in your life so far? Do you and your partner have any places at the top of your list to visit someday? Yes, I would say that I have traveled a good amount, but not nearly the amount of some of my friends. So I, consider myself very privileged to have gone on holiday a number of times as a kid to different places and then, again as an adult. But I'm not a big traveler, and there are a lot of obvious places that I haven't been to, if that makes sense. So I've been to a lot of Europe, and I've been to the USA 3 times, to New Orleans for our honeymoon, to New York when I turned 30, and I went to like LA and Las Vegas with my dad when I was a teenager. I don't think I've been anywhere else outside of Europe. So I've been to Spain and Germany and Austria and Italy a few times, Slovakia because my friend lived there. So that was kind of an interesting one. And the same friend is now moving to Sweden. So it looks like I'll be going to Sweden. I went to Copenhagen because I was working for Fog of Love for a bit a few years ago. I'm more of like a city person. I like to go and explore other cities. So I've been to a lot of the ones that I would like to go to, but I really want to go back to Berlin and to Amsterdam and to Paris, which I haven't been to since I was a kid. It's the cities that fascinate me. But yeah, I haven't ever been to Asia or Africa or Antarctica. I would like to go to all of those, but money is a thing. And I don't have the bug like some people do. I never went in a gap year. And I've just not gone on one of those big traveling things. I have a weird thing with holidays where I hate the idea of cramming all the best parts of my life into like 1 or a few weeks of a year. Like I want to enjoy everything. Lots of small fun throughout the year, and a big holiday, I think it's just over too quickly for me is kind of the thing. So top of my list would be Berlin and Paris. The top of Serena's list would be Vietnam, somewhere in Asia. Scott McVeigh asks, what is one of your favorite gaming stories? And I've just been thinking, and I really am struggling for gaming stories, but I'll tell you one recently, which was we were playing Don't Get Got, round of friends. We had like a party games day. One of my challenges was get someone to accuse you of cheating. And I thought, well, that should be pretty easy because we're playing games all day. We were keeping track of scores, like on this app. And in front of everyone else, I was like adding points to it. And everyone was just like getting annoyed at me. They just thought I was being like weird. They just thought I was being a dick. But they wouldn't accuse me of cheating. And so I kept having to do it. And so I did like multiple things throughout the day. And then finally someone accused me of cheating. They were all just like, oh, I didn't think you were cheating. I just thought you were being annoying. And basically I'd built up like over about an hour and a half, like just this a really annoying persona. I'm hoping that they actually remembered that it was because I was trying to cheat for the game, and I do get invited back. Ashley Rodriguez asked, John, please tell us about your bicycle. I'm jealous of those canal paths you showed us during lockdown. In my vlog videos in 2020, we went out on our bikes, and so that's what that's referring to. And yeah, we got loads of great like canal paths around here that are great for cycling on. And there's quite a few good bike lanes in London these days. I've got like it's like a sit-up bike. They're kind of like a Dutch bike. We went to Amsterdam years ago now, and it's just amazing there. I wish that London was on that level in terms of bike lanes, because I would use it so much more. I just really like this style of like being upright rather than, I used to have a bike where you go faster theoretically and you've got your head down, more streamlined. But I like to be able to see things, and I like people to be able to see me better. And I'm kind of more of a casual cyclist. I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. I would never go the speed some people go. Yeah, really, really love my bike, but I tend to be a bit more of like a summer cyclist, which is a bit of a shameful thing, but it's just so cold. It's hard enough to want to leave the house as it is without kind of putting on all this extra gear to get onto your bike. So I was doing it at the height of the pandemic before I was vaccinated, but now it's just far too easy. The tube is just a wonderful thing, and when you're traveling such distances, it takes so long on the bike, so I'm lazy as it happens. But in the summer, they take you to new places and you get to adventure a bit more, and there are some really nice bars and restaurants along the canal. I love going there and just kind of taking a blanket and some card games. Matthias Ulich asks, what are favorite games based on a license? Movie, TV, book, video game? Well, probably quite a few actually. I love Game of Thrones, the board game, 2nd edition, Battlestar Galactica, Spartacus I really like, but I never watched the TV show. Sons of Anarchy I like and have watched the TV show, but I would say it's great for, you don't need to like the TV show. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, I've actually never read a Sherlock book, but I really like those based on that book. It is a bit trickier if the license is about something that you're just not that fascinated by. It feels weird to keep it and own something. Spartacus, I guess, is a bit of an anomaly for me there, but I don't really see it. I so sort of ignore the fact that even a TV show exists, and it still makes sense on its own because it's about this historical thing, gladiators and whatever, and you don't need to understand the... But if a game is sort of about like a very specific thing and I didn't care about that world, I think that would probably turn me off a bit more, unless I could then buy into it and then, fall in love with the book or something. A. Jonia asked, do you have a good list of beginner games to play with kids? I don't. That's something that I possibly should work on, but I just don't have loads of experience playing games with kids. But that's something that might change a little bit. We just had our niece and nephew over to visit for Christmas, and I played a couple of games with them then, and they're just on the cusp. They understood what was going on, but they were struggling to follow the rules. We played Dragon's Breath by Haber and Go Cuckoo, also by Haber. Eric Brammer asked, do you have any games that every time they hit the table, someone says, hey, remember that time about something that happened during a previous play of that game? If so, what's the game? And if it's shareable, what's the memory? I think Risk Legacy is one where, because the board has your different countries that you wrote down, you relive the games and you remember, I conquered there and then that's how I won the game. And that's kind of nice. The nice side of legacy games is that you're playing back over your previous experiences. Game of Thrones is another one for sure that I remember things of, but it's been so long now and between certain games that they do sort of blend in with each other a little bit. And it tends to be that I remember an overall amazing feeling. And I remember, betrayals and negotiations, but they could be from one game or they could be from another game, and they kind of just join together in my mind. Julian Nolter asked, I would like to know how to best learn about different game types or terms. I see terms like hidden movement, heavy euro, worker placement, dungeon crawler come up on board game review sites and in YouTube videos, cherry picking the ones I do know and get, but there are many others out there. I'm only familiar with some of these terms and wonder if you have a recommendation on how to be on top of the lingo. Is there a website, book or YouTuber you can recommend? Or maybe you want to do your own video covering the various terms. Yeah, it's really tricky. I don't have a good recommendation, just to start off with that. It's tough to learn all these things. And I've, in the past, tried to avoid using those terms. But then that's also really hard to then explain the thing from scratch every time. I asked Julia to give me some examples, and she said pick up and deliver or print and play. I assume the names are telling, but still. So pick up and deliver is a game where you will go to a location. It's a map. You will pick something up, so some resources or something, and then you will move to another location and deliver it there, usually to get points. So it tends to be quite thematic. There's a game, Cinque Terre, where you play as like traders in Italy, and you're going to the farms to get the fruits and stuff, and then you're going to the towns to sell them. And that game works really nicely with the theme. It's not a super popular mechanism, pick up and deliver. I've maybe only got 1 or 2 games. Merchants and Marauders is a game that I like, where you play as like pirates and merchant ships, and you're traveling things from different islands. Whereas print and play is, it's a game where you can print it out at home and play it. And so rather than buy the game, you can just get the files for it, like a PDF file, and print out the cards or the rules or whatever, so you can just play it immediately. So some Kickstarters will let you do it so you can test the game out, or it's just a way to get hold of a game really cheaply or really early before it's actually been officially printed. I wish there weren't so many specific terms. I think there are some that are kind of so important now and that also make sense, like deck building, worker placement, roll and write. I think you sort of have to use them because they're integral to what we're doing. But then there are other things like action selection that I just think is way too vague and doesn't really help describe what's going on that well. And it just feels very, I just really hate that term. And there are other ones like that I think I would like to hear less of. Card drafting, I think, is one that, again, we probably have to stick with, but it didn't make a lot of sense to me when I first heard it. I wish there were less of them, but I guess this is just being into any hobby. Wow, if you try and learn about cameras and doing YouTube videos, there is so much jargon. Like even today, I was watching a video. I've been a YouTuber for 6 years, and I was watching a video today, and some guy was saying something, and I had no idea what he was talking about. So I guess it's just being an adult, apparently. Michael asks, can you share anything about your exploration of writing implements like the Lamy Safari you had in a recent video? Yeah, so this is something we talked about in the Patreon comments. Someone spotted this pen in my top 50 video with the Detective City of Angels, and it's a Lamy Safari ballpoint pen. It was just one of these like lockdown, I would not call it a hobby, a lockdown rabbit hole where, you know, you're trapped inside, you're watching YouTube videos and you're finding something to get fascinated about. And I can quite easily get fascinated about things. And there's a whole world of pen aficionados out there. They make you believe like it's, you know, really important to have like the right pen. I didn't spend too much money. I bought 3 pens. So I've got this Lamy Safari ballpoint pen, then the Lamy Safari rollerball, which is quite nice. I like this one. It's good thickness, good hold. I like that. And then this is the Kaweco Classic Sport, or Kaweco Sport Classic. I quite like this one as well. We were playing Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. We tend to play it on the sofa, and so I'll be like sat with like my knees up with a notebook on my knees. And so if you don't have the gravity, you know, if your pen's like this and it's a rollerball, then the ink's not coming out that great. And that kind of frustrates me because I'm often writing in that situation. Like if I'm writing in a notebook, I'll tend to be in some like lazy position on the sofa. So that's the thing that like lets down like a rollerball, even though I sort of prefer those. I don't know if I would dip back into the pen world. I came, you know, way too close to getting some silly thing that like hovered or something, or had its own like metal pen stand or something, and I'm so glad I didn't, because that was just lockdown brain, and we've moved past that, thankfully. Peter Hazelhurst asked, do you buy your own clothes? Now, this was funny because that just threw me. I didn't know what. I mean, the answer is yes. I do buy my own clothes. So I asked him for a clarification. And I haven't paid him to say this. He says, "You always look so well dressed, John. Just wondered if you buy for yourself, or perhaps you hire a personal shopper, or perhaps Serena buys for you. If it's you, where do you shop for clothes? Oxford Street, Carnaby Street, Camden Market? Also, what about the costumes and props for your character sketches? Were they found at the back of your wardrobe, or did you have to source them especially?" The answer is, yeah, I do buy my own clothes. It's something that I've got more into as I got older. When you're younger, it's really hard because you've got absolutely no money and you're starting from sort of scratch. And then as you get older, you can buy something nice one year and then it lasts for another 5 or 10 years. And so then you buy something nice the next year and you sort of curate this wardrobe in the way that you kind of do with a board game collection. Serena helps me a bit, but she definitely kind of probably nurtured an interest in it, but we're talking like 10 or more years ago, and then I've got more into it myself. In terms of where I buy them, I don't have a personal shopper. That would be quite lavish. Oxford Street sometimes, Carnaby Street sometimes, but more so online. I like to just browse endlessly through things and like pick out stuff. I really like online shopping for anything. I find it's really good for clothes because you get to see so much more than you could ever see in a shop. And I find shopping in person, especially in London, can be like really exhausting. Lots of people, lots of walking. And then if you, at the end of that day, come back with nothing because you found nothing you like, it just feels so demoralizing. Camden Market, I hate Camden. This is a complete sidetrack, but if you visit London as a tourist, you really don't need to go to Camden. There's just very little there. Unless you're going to a gig there, which is obviously good for. Camden Market is just a really tourist trap, a cheap tap market, and the food there is generally bad, although there is a newer street food section that is a lot better. But again, very like tourist trap type food. I would hate to think that Camden represented London, because for me it's like one of the worst parts, but that's just me. But for the costumes for the characters and stuff, yeah, that would tended to be older clothes of mine. Barry, for example, wears this horrible like mauve or lilac office shirt that I haven't worn in years, but I had all the way back from when I was like temping at like 21 years old. And it was I had just like a couple of office shirts, and I've thankfully never had to sort of dress up to go into an office since then. But I always just kind of kept that shirt in case I would need it for like jury duty or something. And then the scarves would come from Serena. So the girlfriend's scarf and the mother's scarf was a scarf that she didn't like anymore, which now I just keep for the character. The Timmy hat I bought because I knew specifically kind of what I wanted, and I just got that on eBay. But generally speaking, I haven't really bought any of the other characters' stuff. It's always about trying to find ways to use things that we have, because it's really annoying to buy something and then you've just got another thing to store, and it's just feels like a waste. And often the characters have like come from the things that we have. And the art teacher from my Pictionary video is like a blazer that I had, and then probably be like with one of Serena's scarves, and it sort of combined to create an art teacher. Codename1 asks, do you still eat pizza with your bare hand whilst playing board games? And if yes, when will you stop being a monster? Yeah, I hadn't appreciated I got caught doing this. When I went round to my friend Ben's house for the first game night in 6 months vlog, and we'd had a few drinks and he got in takeaway pizza and I was just eating. I've kind of moved on a bit from how I used to be. I tend to not worry too much about those things, but I would make sure that there are napkins out to just kind of like clean your hands a little bit in case it gets onto anything permanently. But yeah, we were playing Lord of the Rings Confrontation, which is like an out of print game. So hopefully we didn't damage it. But yeah, I still eat pizza. I still play it. I'm sorry. Life's too short. I love pizza. I love games. Bring them together and have a great time. I suppose I should use cutlery, right? But again, life's too short. That's it. Those are all the questions. If you'd like to ask a question for my next Q&A, then become a patron at patreon.com/Actualol, where we have now got an Actualol Discord channel where we can talk about games that you've played, we chat about games, and arrange Board Game Arena games. So if you ever want to play me on Board Game Arena, well, that's what I'm doing currently with my patrons on the new Discord. I'm John Perkis. Thanks for watching.